Okay, my thumbs are fully recovered after the events of Merry Megaland, so I figured it's about time that we finally gonna be dive right into the extra mode. Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos, as you probably expect at this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch, basically based off from Kirby's Return to Dreamland back on the Nintendo Wii, so yeah, you probably get the idea. So, last time, we've essentially finally managed to accomplish the full 100% completion, or should I say, the true 100% completion, during the forms of Merry Megaland. And let me tell you, it's really painful, especially noticeable towards the end, that we have to go through, without a doubt, the hardest missions I have to go through, which I'm sure I've already managed to point it out in a comment section during the forms of in the last video, but either way though, that might be saying something. So today, for this video, is about the fact that we're able to actually get things started by go ahead and play through the extra mode, because I know one of you guys out there who managed to comment this, and sure enough, it's about time I finally managed to go ahead and do this. Especially noticeable because, as far as what Ray has already explained about this, ever since in during the forms have been yesterday's Super Mario RPG parts, basically though, it's about the fact that we're still missing some more masks that we do need to unlock. Well, that's what the extra mode comes into play. And as you can tell, I'm actually going to be talking over for this cutscene this time around though, because technically speaking, when it comes to the cutscenes in this game, obviously about the fact that depending on what mode you're playing on, basically the cutscenes in the extra mode plays out exactly the same, aside from the fact that we will come across into some additional scenes here and there. Like, you probably already pointed things out, during at some point once we get to the forms of another dimension for the second time for this particular version of the game. So either way though, I will say about the fact that during the forms of the entire remake of the specific cutscenes like this, they're all like pretty gorgeous. Although sometimes I will admit though right away is that based on the forms of King Dedede's design, feels a bit odd at times, which I totally get it because it's almost entirely based around with the forms of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. But as a result for that particular matter though, it doesn't bother me too much though, but I have to admit it though, it is kind of weird able to actually see the actual design of King Dedede based off from, you know, Kirby and the Forgotten Land for certain cutscenes like this, because I know for a fact that a lot of people are pretty much used to with the original Wii version a lot more, but usually, relatively speaking, that's what I can really say about this for the most part. So, although the plot remains the same, so obviously about the fact that we still need to go after some of those Megalore ship parts, and especially noticeable with, of course, energy spheres as what it's shown here. And on top of all that stuff though, we might as well go for the exactly same levels again. But there's actually a catch to this though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that there's going to be some more secrets that we can able to discover. And as it turns out, about the fact that there's actually 3 of those secrets that we can find this time around, which I'll talk things more through until whenever we get into the actual extra mode for reals. So, but either way though, yeah, there's not much else to say about this, I guess. So, but either way though. So, anyway, a few things I want to explain for this point today, and that's what appears to be about the fact that today's date, of course, is the 14th of August today, in some cases in 2023 today. I would have liked to explain something else for that matter though, but I think I should probably save that particular topic once we're able to actually get this entire extra mode started. And for those of you probably wondering is that the extra mode playthrough might go a bit extremely long, especially noticeable because without a doubt that extra mode is the hard mode of the game. The reason being for this is because obviously about the fact that you go through exactly the same levels again as before, except now as you can see on the bottom left corner, basically we now actually have our health meter is now in half, meaning about the fact that we can't afford to get hit multiple times, because otherwise if your health is started to deplete, basically though you start to lose lives very fast. Although, thankfully though, about the fact that in this version in particular, at the very least you can able to save your extra lives every time whenever you manage to switch off the game or exit out the game or something like that. So at least that's the generous part about it. Especially noticeable that unlike the original Wii version, where basically though your life starts able to reset itself. So even then though, that might be inconsistent at points. And also, we can now able to actually experience the entire adventure again, except this time we can now able to utilize the item storage. So because of that though, we'll try to go ahead and use that quite frequently, until of course if we dare manage to come across into certain boss encounters. For instance with the forms of Sphere Dumas, and especially notable for certain boss fights. So, and everything else will be pretty much encountered for, so I think we should be all set by then. Especially noticeable concerning about that particular point that if you do manage to able to utilize the forms of the item storages based off on the forms of certain items you get, based off in Journey forms of Merry Megaland, that basically though, as I said before, you can only carry up to 5 different items. Like, you can only use one at a time, so as a result, as I mentioned this before, there's the forms of the energy drink, which allows you to able to increase one of your health, and on top of that with the forms of the random copy ability instances, basically though it acts out as like a slot machine basically, or a roulette wheel, for whichever copy abilities you want to go for. And there's also journey forms of Cracker, basically that allows us to able to use the cannon thingy whatever you wish. So yeah, that might be come in handy, especially noticeable if you're having a hard time journey forms within the extra mode. And on top of that, there's also maximum tomatoes, and on top of that, there's also the balloon bomb, which basically functions the same thing as the regular version of that particular bomb item, as we've already come across in 2 for some scenarios. But either way though, you can now potentially try to use that at any point. So, however, there's only one in particular exception to this rule though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that you can't use those items during forms within challenge mode, because otherwise that would be cheating by that particular method. Although, I would have wished if I was able to actually utilize those, but honestly though, it's just a way of how the thing was expectable to. So either way, so yeah, let's just go ahead and use this Ultra Sword, so just to ensure that we were able to actually burst out as many of those blocks, essentially, and every once in a while about the fact that we're most able to still collect some of these energy spheres from time to time, especially noticeable that again it requires, you know, the actual 100% completion basically. So either way though, so that's essentially what I'm going to go for, and especially noticeable at that particular point that we still need able to actually traverse for the other like portal dimension. So either way, and what makes things a little bit difficult and challenging this time around though, when it comes to the forms of the portal sections here and there, that appears to be about the fact that aside from the fact that, well, relatively speaking, is that the actual background color, well, it might look exactly the same, except now the shifting wall is actually moving way too fast here, so meaning about the fact that you can't afford to able to slow down every now and then, so just gotta go fast basically. So either way, since about the fact that you should probably already know about the fact that there's quite a few stuff I would like to mention, and that's what appears to be about the fact that there are quite a few stuff has been happening, like for instance about the fact that there was this Nickelodeon series called Paw Patrol. Basically, that particular series has now became a decade old, which, as a result, while looking back on it though, well, despite the fact that I've never actually watched any of those episodes of Paw Patrol, to be honest with you, because not only did I somehow manage able to not a huge demographic for that particular point, but it's also about the fact that, well, relatively speaking now, I'm somehow still watching some other TV series from time to time, like for instance The Simpsons, and especially noticeable with the forms of, you know, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and especially noticeable with the Powerpuff Girls 1998 version specifically. In addition to that though, with the good old classic Tom and Jerry, and on top of all that stuff though, just any other shows I obviously do like. So either way, and same place with the forms of SpongeBob SquarePants, specifically Season 1 all the way up to Season 3 basically, because these are pure gold when it comes to the forms of the SpongeBob series for that departure, especially noticeable because I know for a fact that a lot of people seem to able to have a lot of mixed reactions during the forms of the later seasons to come, beginning with Season 4 in mind, but either way though, that might be saying something I suppose. So Anyway though, so let's just go ahead and participate in this gold game again, and somehow I ended up landing on the 7 there. But that's just because there was actually a trick to this though. If you really want to get so many extra lives, that basically though, when it comes to the gold game itself, you have to start from 7, and then 6, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and if you put those in the correct order, which, mind you, is incredibly difficult most of your time, because obviously it requires a lot of timing requirement, and on top of that, well, basically though, it's depending on the forms of how fast you're able to actually go into that particular bungee jump thingy right there. So, and once you do manage to able to put those things successfully, basically though, you can able to get yourselves plenty of extra lives, which that would be pretty useful though, which unfortunately though, from my own time, whenever I managed to play this on my own time, on my actual main file, I just couldn't seem to able to actually accomplish that, especially noticeable because, well, relatively speaking though, despite this game is pretty easy, well, usually relatively speaking, the only time exception being is of course, the extra mode, just because, as I mentioned this before, that every once in a while though is about the fact that, as you can tell, I'm almost running out of health, so as a result that if I dare manage to able to get hit by certain enemies most of my time, basically though, you will expect able to drain my lives very, very fast. So, hopefully that won't be that much of an issue, I don't think, so even then though, I will try my best if I was trying to able to survive so many of those stuff as much as possible, so either way though, that might be saying something. So, anyways, speaking of about, 10 years old syndrome basically, or in some cases a decade old kind of stuff, basically though is about the fact that another one of those series recently became a decade old. That's what appears to be by the forms of the Disney XD kind of TV series, and that's what appears to be by the forms of the Marvel series called Hulk and the Agents of Smash. So basically though, it's about the fact that it involves around, the Incredible Hulk and all that stuff, which, to be quite frank here, I also have not seen those series either, but that's just because about the fact that I'm sort of more into the forms of likely, playing into video games more often, especially noticeable, just keep on playing hours and hours when it comes to playing on, not only on my Nintendo 3DS, but also on the Wii U systems as well, mainly because about the fact of my high expectations, able to actually just to be excited for, upcoming games, like for instance with Super Mario 3D World, along with the forms of any other games for that matter, and on top of that, still been busy just trying to able to rewatch certain episodes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic back then, specifically during the forms of Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3, before Season 4 happened back in 2013. Like, oh man, I remember it so much, and especially it really helps about the fact that, well, obviously it just keeps me going to the actual main, hypeness involved, as far as this is concerned, I guess, especially noticeable that still, I'm the brownie, so deal with it. So, anyway though, there's actually another thing I surprisingly forgot to comment on back in during forms of in the past few parts or something like that. Specifically, something relates to Mario Kart Tour. That's what appears to be about the fact that, well, aside from the fact that, well, we're almost at the halfway point, in terms of the forms of the Vacation Tour. So as a result, hopefully by that time until in this Friday, that are obviously about the fact that the next tour should be announced by that time. And on top of all that stuff, though, there's actually a new cup is actually introduced during the forms of the actual Vacation Tour, which I surprisingly forgot to comment on. That's what appears to be by the forms of the Burrowing Bro Cup. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool and interesting when it comes to that particular cup choice kind of thing about it. Especially noticeable because I'm pretty sure we've now actually got not only the Fire Bro Cup, but also with the forms of the Ice Bro Cup, and of course, the Fire Bro Cup, and now we actually got ourselves the Burrowing Bro Cup. So yeah, that's actually super interesting when it comes to like cup selections, journey forms within Mario Kart Tour, but either way though, that might as well be saying something, I suppose. So either way, there goes the forms of level 1-2 right here. Of course, World 1 should be pretty short, so because of that though, and it's also one of the easiest worlds in the game, so everything else will be pretty much accounted for. So either way, speaking of which though, is about the fact that there's also another anniversary thing that just happened. And that's what appears to be by the forms of, apparently there's this weird film called Sausage Party. Basically though, that film is now 7 years old, which as a result, while looking back on it though, is pretty weird. Like, I know for a fact that sometimes the concept feels a bit too bizarre, but at the same time though, I do appreciate about the fact that they're going with the actual darker tone, or potentially speaking though, mainly for the mature CGI animated movie or something like that, which I know for a fact that it's based around food and what have you. So either way though, yeah, while looking back on it though, aside from the fact that I do recognize one of the voices that who also did Donkey Kong currently during the films of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and that's of course Seth Rogen, and as a result about the fact that he did one of the voices as Frank. So yeah, that might be saying something. So anywho though, speaking of which though, there's another film that did recently came up to be as the films of the anniversary department, and that's what appears to be buddy films of. There's a film called American Graffiti, which did came out in 1973, which is roughly exactly the same year as the films of Disney's Robin Hood, and at the same time with James Bond's first Roger Moore movie, which appears to be buddy films of James Bond's Live and Let Die, where basically though, I think Graffiti, actually kind of think about it, American Graffiti also came out 50 years ago, so because of that though, or yeah, I think it's like 50 years ago, so even then though, I keep on thinking about something else for that matter, specifically From Russia with Love, because obviously until next year, about the fact that until likely in 2024, that we'll expect able to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the release of Goldfinger. So because of that though, yeah, you probably get the idea about that, especially noticeable because thanks to Shadow did somehow mention to me about this during the films within the other day, despite the fact that he's more into the films of not only James Bond stuff, but also with the films of Fast and Furious movies, and especially noticeable recently with Mission Impossible film series, for that matter, so. But either way, oh, and every once in a while though, we will come across into some trickier moments here and there, like for instance, if you're trying to grab the hold of your key, to able to actually access to certain doors and what have you, basically certain enemies will like to able to home in on you, and one of those enemies in particular does kind of reminds me of the forms of the Phantom Mask from the likes of Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, or Doki Doki Panic, well, to be more specifically for the likes of the forms of, well, you probably get the idea, where if you hold the key, something decides to follow you, and at the same time, they want you dead. So either way though, yeah, we've got to be very careful of some situations like that, so. But I suppose it really doesn't matter if we do somehow die in one of those rooms in particular, because thankfully with the checkpoints always seems to be activated every time whenever we move to move on to the next section, so that's pretty much expected, you know? So, anyway though, and fun fact, when it comes to the forms of, darn it, there's my first death of extra mode. Again, I will admit though right away, I will try my best if I don't die so many times, because obviously about the fact that there's nothing wrong with the forms of extra mode in general for me though, it's just that I'm never really accustomed to it as much as the forms of the main mode, but that's just because about the fact that, well, with normal mode in mind, it's actually way too easy for that regard, but it's just about the fact that I'm not exactly a huge custom to the forms of extra mode as often, so. But regardless of such though, I have to do it anyway for the sake of the forms of not only just trying to able to go through the entire main adventure again, although except the fact that we can able to unlock some more masks during the forms of the actual main portion of the game itself, because I know for a fact that we're still missing some of those unlockables for certain dress-up masks, for that matter. So I think something tells me about the fact that we will come across into ourselves EX boss fights. So either way though, that might have been saying something. Basically it's like a stronger variations of certain bosses that we've already fight against. So yeah, that might be saying something, so. Alright, so I don't think we actually unlocked something just yet until we basically decided able to complete the 4th stage, so. And this is where the point about the fact that, like I said before, I will able to actually show you guys another secrets in this particular game, which obviously is also mandatory if you really want to go for a true 100% reward. And that's what appears to be buddy forms of the Hell Rooms. So, I believe unlike the forms of how it does in the original game, specifically the original version of Kirby's Return to Dreamland on the Wii, there's only a grand total of 2 Hell Rooms. In this version this time around though, they're now including 3. Like for instance about the fact that, well, we're still able to come across into 2 hell rooms, but they'll also have ourselves one new one, which appears to be located by the very end of the game. So yeah, you see why until whenever we get to that specific point. So yeah, the first hell room is actually right down there, because as you can see, that particular part has now been changed, and that's where we're able to find the first hell room. So, and basically we can able to hear this classic tune in the background, so either way though, that might be super iconic and everything. So yeah, here's our first hell room right here, filled to the brim with a lot of blocks, and especially noticeable with other copy abilities as well. Like for instance, about the fact that we got ourselves the mecha copy ability, as well as the sand copy ability, as well as the forms of stone, and especially noticeable with the forms of let's say ninja, and of course junior forms of, let's say, water, I guess. Because, well, mind you about the fact that, again, as I said before, it's been about 3 days ago, because thankfully my farms has now been fully recovered, as I mentioned this before, since the very beginning of this particular point of this entire playthrough. But that's just because about the fact that I have no desire to able to actually go ahead and say that, well, when it comes to Merry Megaland. Although, the only time I will come back for that particular mode, though, is of course having fun just playing the actual mode with friends for multiplayer. But aside from all that stuff, though, I have no desire to able to actually go for a 400% completion of the missions themselves ever again. And as a result, I'll get to my main point about it. And during the forms of, let's just say, the true finale of the forms of Kirby's Eternal Dreamland Deluxe itself. So, but sometimes it might take a bit while though, especially noticeable because obviously that, in addition about the fact that we're most able to go through exactly the same stages as before, but also about the fact that if you really want to go for a 400% completion on the forms of an extra mode, you also need to do the challenge stages as well, likely also for the forms of in Lord Starcutter as far as this is concerned. So, yeah, that's what I can really say about this, I guess. So, but either way though. And yeah, fun fact about the forms of American Graffiti, that was actually the first ever feature film of Lucasfilm. So because of this though, yeah, it's actually quite interesting as far as this is concerned. Like, I know for a fact that despite I've not actually seen the film yet, but that's just because about the fact that I'm pretty much gonna have to able to actually go ahead and say that I probably won't be watching any films anytime soon, unless to be more specifically, if the next couple of films should be on its way, specifically with the Marvels, alongside with the films of Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget, because these are the only two films I'm actually really looking forward to. Let's just say towards the very end of this particular 2023 year in mind. So, but that'll be a topic for a later time, especially noticeable concerning about the fact that maybe that the other toys were able to actually mention more about it during the course of the forms of the later Let's Plays to come, for the majority of the forms of the ending conclusion of 2023, all things considered. So, but either way though, that might be saying something, so. Oh yeah, I should also mention about this as well, is that what appears to be about the fact that there was actually a special reward if you managed able to pre-order Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, which appears to be buddy forms, let's just say buddy forms of a cosmetic skin for Patrick Star, that it was actually based off of one of those episodes in particular, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, to be more specifically, where he actually dressed up as the forms of, let's just say, elastic waistband. Like, for instance, about the fact that one of those costumes is actually based off from that, which I will say, that's actually a pretty cool touch, I'm not gonna lie. Although, despite the fact that I'm probably not gonna get the game day one, to be honest with you, because obviously I'm almost running out of room for the storage space, for not only from the likes of my PlayStation 4, but also with my Nintendo Switch as well, because obviously I'm still saving up for certain other games in the future, for, you know, eventually if the Switch almost gets to its ending conclusion before they moved on to the next generation of consoles, presumably. But it's very difficult to tell, because obviously about the fact that sometimes with rumors and leaks, sometimes I don't trust them, so even then that might be saying something, so. And also, since about the fact that we're going to be experiencing the extra mode variants of the forms of, you know, when you try to deal with the forms of Sphere Doomers, basically though, they're now able to actually have themselves one eye. Like, for instance, it's more likely like a demon version of Mike Wazowski, or Mike Wazowski, I should say. I know for a fact that I apologize for my commentary, it's a little bit iffy at points, because again, that, I know, I just need to able to recover my thumbs before I'm able to actually get the continuation of these specific parts going, and as a result, that I'm very appreciative my thumbs is actually now a lot better, so... Either way though, that's all I can really say about this, I guess. And it looks like we've only got about 16 more days to go until, well, Mario Plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Rayman in the Phantom Show is going to be on its way. So, but either way though, I'm sure I will be able to discuss more details about that particular DLC until specifically by the end of this month in particular. So, but even then though, time will tell, especially noticeable because, well, I gotta say, that we've almost at the halfway point in terms of the forms of August already. I know for a fact that, relatively speaking, technically that Ray the Flying Squirrel has already mentioned about this already, but even then though, I was not able to mention about this again anyway, just in case I just want to cut to the chase when it comes to the forms of what specific stimulations as far as this is concerned. Now, for what I've heard about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the lowest rating projects, for specifically based off from the likes of Rotten Tomatoes website, for I've heard that when it comes to the forms of Marvel stuff itself, basically though is about the fact that apparently though there are 3 MCU projects that actually received some very low scores recently. Like for instance in the top 3 or the top 3 bottom lowest rated movies as far as I'm concerned, which there are, or specifically the lowest rated projects from MCU, which are Secret Invasion, Internals, and Quantumania. Like, I know for a fact that, well, relatively speaking, when it comes to Secret Invasion, did somehow receive the actual series as in 55%. And when it comes to Internals though, they somehow received a score of 47. And now, that with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania did somehow receive the lowest of the bunch, like receiving about 46%, which I know for a fact that was quite shocking, especially concerning about that particular point. I think my guess is this has something to do with the forms of some very weird, bizarre CGI design of the forms of, although despite the fact that it's been about a couple of weeks ago since actually I've last watched Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, but that's just because about the fact I just really want to move on to the next film during the forms of this particular multiverse saga as far as this is concerned, because I know for a fact that the next couple of series we might able to be excited for, which is of course Loki Season 2, and for what I've heard, Echo should be on its way, and of course the Marvels as I mentioned earlier. So but either way though, and that'll be about it when it comes to certain Marvel projects for the sake of the forms of 2023, before we move on to 2024 basically. So but either way though, of course I'm still excited for the forms of Deadpool 3, but I know for a fact that Shadow is also going to be excited for that as well. So but either way though, and that pretty much wraps it up for everything in terms of the forms of Cookie Country. So of course, about the fact that we can able to move on to the next world, and since about the fact that we're going to be able to go inside in the forms of Lord Starcutter at first, because obviously about the fact that, well, we have to go through a serious amount of conversations all over again, like you're still able to see some of these sub-games again, as well as the forms of some of those copy ability rooms, and of course, challenge stages. Now, I will mention about the forms of the challenge stages until for later time, because obviously I'm probably not going to be able to say things right about now, and thus not to mention though is about the fact that we've only barely got started with the forms of the extra mode as far as this is concerned, so... But, yeah, everything else will be pretty much expected at this point, so either way. Now, before we end off the video right here, we need to head back into the forms of that particular Merry Megaland, as I mentioned this before, because once you deal with the forms of certain EX boss fights, basically though is about the fact that as soon as we go back in here, obviously about the fact that in addition to able to get ourselves some more tickets for the stamps or something like that, but also be able to unlock the next mask, which as a result, it's now Wispy Woods EX, so that's the reason why I decided able to go through extra mode playthrough anyway, just in case about the fact that we can able to show off certain stuff anyway, so... And as it seems about the fact that I think we only got about roughly 7-ish masks left, so even then though, it's actually getting pretty close during that specific period, so... Although sometimes, again, the actual extra mode playthrough might take a bit of while. And not only that, I feel like I'm about able to wear one of those masks based off from the main villains of the Kirby's past, which make things a little bit of a change of scenery, especially noticeable because, well, this may have itself some nice little callbacks from any other stuff, but either way though, yeah, I think I should probably end things off this point right here. So either way, join me next time for more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe on the extra mode playthrough. We're going to be going for the forms of the second world, which is of course Raisin Ruins. So this will be interesting on extra mode, so see you guys on Wednesday. Later fellas.